and welcome to We Women Want. This week we are going to be taking a look at the issue of prenups. Are they legally valid in India? Should couples actually try and go in for those? Do they make marriage easier, or do they raise contentious issues at a time when you should be talking about love and romance and planning honeymoons? That is something we're going to be discussing. Of course, the issue has come to fore because of actress Celina Jaitley, who's going through a very bitter divorce, and she's now saying that she wished she had signed a prenup with her husband. And she was married to an Austrian, so it's not an Indian wedding per se. But this is an issue that I think needs to come to the fore, because we are seeing a lot of couples fighting over assets, fighting over children, everything comes into the issue of prenup. What is prenup? It's an agreement made between couples over, supposing there is a split over division of assets, maybe even child custody. But before I go into it, let's talk to my panel. I have a panel of very distinguished lawyers, women who've seen both sides of the equation. So we'll tell you the pros and cons, the side from the women's point of view, the side from the men's point of view. Joining me on the show today is Dr. Alka Dahar. She's a founder and managing partner at Law Offices of India. Rashmi Kathpalia, she is an advocate and mediator. And Shreya Singhal, she's also an advocate. Alka, I'll begin with you, because can you just put it in context? What is the position in India? What is a prenup, and where do we stand in India?
See, prenups are not automatically enforceable in India like it is outside India. But I think this is exactly what is required today, because I also feel that it's an extension of Article 21. I mean, if as two consenting adults I can get into matrimony, why shouldn't I have the freedom to be able to decide the financial consequences pertaining to my marriage for the financial assets that I have earned? Why should I expose myself to it? So I actually think that it's a very important part, and it's just that most of the people and most of the clients, that their mentality is as such, is they say, once we're getting into the marriage, and like you rightly said, that when you get married, you should be planning your honeymoons and not getting into a prenup. So my answer to that would be, when you buy a new car from a showroom, you don't just take it out without insurance. Now, we don't buy the car thinking that, I'm going to get out of the showroom, I'm going to have an accident, so I need insurance. We don't do that. It's just that life is gloriously unpredictable. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. So we need to be fully prepared for it. And I think it's absolutely required now. It should be made, and also we also need to keep in mind is that it's not compulsory for everybody to get into a prenup. But if I, as an individual, want to get into a prenup, there should be nothing stopping me. Saying that, God forbid, if something does happen, and these are the ways my financial assets and other financial exposure will be regulated. It doesn't regulate the marriage, it regulates the financial consequences of it. Secondly, also, we need to keep in mind is that it doesn't cover custody of children, maintenance, and stuff like that. So we don't need to be scared of that. And third, also, is that if I do have a prenup, it has to be enforced through the courts. So if something is prejudicial to the wife or the husband or the children, the courts will look into it. So it's just a safeguard. It's nothing to be looked at like it's so unromantic that you're starting a marriage thinking that, yes, it's going to end up in divorce.
So Rashmi, where do you stand on the issue of prenups? Do you think that's a good idea, or you think India is not yet ready for it?
So I'm half and half, and I'll tell you why, and I want to supplement what Alka just said. Firstly, there is no stopping us from getting into the prenup. Only thing is, we do not have in India currently, for the Hindu Marriage Act, we do not have any statutory backing for such prenups to be used at the time when there's a breakdown of marriage, to show that this is what was decided, and for the courts to take that document completely as it was. It does not, while under Section 14 of the Family Court Act, we can take it as an evidence for a backup that this is what the intent was, these were the assets with the woman, these were the assets with the man, this was her separate income. But at the same time, while they are taking these into account, the courts have held, and it's all against public policy, because at the end of the day, it's just a contract. It doesn't come under any act for a backup. And at the same time, they consider marriage as sacred, as sacrosanct. And they say that at the time of getting into marriage, if you're making it a commercial contract, which by the way, Muslims don't. Muslims have a nikah in which such, items can be included, what was there, what is at the time of divorce, what is going to go to the woman, etc., etc. Similarly, in Goa, the Portuguese Act is used, and what we have over there is they use prenuptial agreements. But for Hindus, we are not using it for the reason that we consider it a sacred engagement, a bond. And so far as I'm concerned, addressing your question, seeing the matters that I've done, the cases that the people that I've advised, there's a Married Woman Act in India where we have the listing of all the assets can be taken into account. So prenup is not the only way out at the inception of a marriage, of two people getting together. However, as time has gone by and we have, very bitter divorces of very wealthy people, and it's not just the man who's contributing. Sometimes the man wants to protect his assets, because we are talking Celina Jaitley's case and because we are having a pro-woman conversation right now. I would say that having a prenup is a good idea, but provided it becomes a document which is well counseled, drafted by counsel who have studied the assets, there's a full disclosure of the assets which are there, and again the jurisdiction as to where these assets were. For example, I have heard Celina talking about her assets and how she could have protected them if there was a prenup, but how she landed up giving those assets away after the prenup has happened, during the course, if there is some change, if there's some pressure, she wants to sell her property to help her husband his business, there can be a post-nuptial agreement. So just having a prenup is not going to protect your property. It's usable only at the time when there is a separation and there is a listing that these were her own self-acquired property, either prior or during the marriage.
Okay.
And this is what the situation is going to be. So I'm half and half at present whether it's going to be useful or not.
Okay, Shreya, you're really the voice of the next generation also for all of us on the show. So where do you stand? And I like her last point that maybe it is a listing. This is what I went into the marriage with, just as a matter of record, which can be used maybe for a later on divorce conversation.
So the prenup by its name is an agreement that the couple who intend to get married, before their marriage, they enter into to work out some kind of financial arrangement or a disclosure or a visitation and custody regime for some children that may or may not happen, assuming your current pre-marriage status remains the same. If the parties agree to abide by and they are okay with the prenup, what they have agreed in, what they have done, and they do end up splitting up, God forbid, that agreement gets codified as a post-nuptial agreement or a settlement agreement or an MOU when you sign your mutual consent papers. So you yourself do it. The entire ambit, I think, of the discussion is when there is a vast change of circumstance, of status, of lifestyle of either party at the time of the divorce versus what you signed at the prior.
Correct.
And how that protects the other person. Prenups are not sacrosanct even in Western cultures. It is a Western import into India, the concept of it. And you are looking at two people who are economically and socially equal to each other, which may not be the case for a vast majority of women in India. It is also where dowry and other gifts, that they like to call it, are exchanged at the time of marriage, may put then onerous obligations or constraints that she will not take maintenance, she will take a lesser maintenance in order to save the social status that now how can I cancel the marriage? Right? That's what happens. That's a question everywhere is asked, that if they asked you for dowry, why did you cancel it? oh, cards chhap gaye the. I couldn't, how could I stop it? It's all very easy to see something on Made in Heaven, where at the mandap she'll walk away when she realizes that dowry is asked and that there is such an obligation, but it's not something that happens otherwise.
In real life.
There's a lot of pressure, and the nature of people who come to court seeking relief are from daily wagers to people who have a lot of money. So that one family court or that one DV court is looking at the entire strata. How do you protect someone who then the husband comes and says, who has a higher economic power, that how do you protect the woman because this agreement said I will not take money, or that suddenly you become a billionaire, you will say I'm not going to give any money, you get out of the house, you do whatever, you have not created any assets for your wife who has foregone any opportunity she could have had during the course of the marriage to raise the children, to raise a home. Today the courts have recognized the importance of a homemaker. How much a homemaker would actually earn if she were to do nothing more than to go out and work, or the work she does as a homemaker. This is done even in maintenance matters as well as compensation in motor vehicle accident claims.
Exactly. Which
Where
has
you
happened
have-
a month.
Where you've
a month
given,
back,
where you've given
30,000,
this,
yeah.
and the law, whether it's the Hindu Marriage Act or the Special Marriage Act, or even the protection of women, Muslim women, there is no finality to alimony. If there is a change of circumstance, Section 25 of the Hindu Marriage Act, which is pari materia in the Special Marriage Act, says if there is a change of circumstance, you can change it. Custody orders, by their nature, under the Guardian and Wards Act, which is a secular act, are never final. Because the child is not inanimate. The child changes, the child evolves. A 2-year-old is different from a 3-year-old, is different from a 5-year-old, is different from a 12-year-old, very precocious 12-year-old who refuses to listen to either parent. You know, it's nice to have, okay, I'll have 2 birthdays, one with mama, one with papa. But to parent that child and to say, no, now you have to go to papa every week. That child may say, no, I want to go to the movies with my friends. I don't want to spend time with either of you.
Yeah, which is what the case is
Can
usually.
I go
Yes,
further on
of
this?
course. Huh.
See, you're absolutely right, Shreya. So it is true that yes, the prenups, but the first thing is that it's going to be enforced only through the court. So if there is anything which is not quite right, the courts will look into it. There's also a very common perception saying they always invariably think that the prenups will go against the woman because, and practically in reality that is true.
Against the woman or against the man?
No, but because they
The
say
man doesn't want to share his assets usually.
No, but
But
that
he's sharing the minimum in the prenup.
Exactly.
Oh,
So
And
therefore it
because of
goes
that-
against the wife.
And because of that, I'll tell you a case of ours in which the man, they got married like 20. I mean, this is the reality, and this is what converts into real cases. This woman got married like 20, 25 years back. They were middle class. Because of she was at home, she helped him out with the business. They grew into thousands of crores. And of course, after he had this huge business, he was not sincere. I mean, he had affairs and stuff like that. He made her resign as a director, just asked her to resign. And then out she went. Then she came to me and I said that why don't you, we could have gone 140 to the Supreme Court. I said, because she was ticking all the boxes. She helped him build up that business from scratch to 1,000 crores. She was there all the time. She looked after the children. But in the end, because of the financial pressure, she said, no, I'm not going to go to the court. I said, but why not? Because she said, he's going to stop all the financial assistance to me. He's going to throw us out of the house. The girls are going to be on the street. There's nothing I can do. But if there was a prenup, it would have been a different story altogether because the assets would have been accounted into their settlement and this person would not have been able to do what he did. So prenups is not a bad word. I think it's a very prudent step. And like I said, it doesn't have to happen to every couple. If I want to get into a prenup, but I should be able to do it. And the court should look into it like you said, like Rashmi said, like Section 14. Section 14 is extremely interesting. Why? Because it says that the family court, to decide this matter, can look into the evidence, document whatever, but whether or not, so important, whether or not it is relevant or admissible under the Evidence Act. So that means they can look into any documents, the family court can look into any documents to decide and to get into a fair settlement between the spouses.
Okay. I'm going to take a break and come back on this, so keep the conversation going. Stay with us. Hello and welcome back to We Women Want. We are here today discussing the issue of prenups. Should couples who are just embarking on a life together, on the exchanging vows of marriage, should they also before doing that sign a prenup, or at least where the assets stand? And what Alka said, I just want to take it a step further. Supposing they agree for it and they do sign it, will the courts uphold it as a legal document?
Of course, to the extent what Alka mentioned under section 14, whether it's upheld or not on its own is questionable, because like I said, there is no statute to back it. But as a piece of evidence regarding the intent of the parties at the inception of the association of the two parties when they married, that can be clarified. What was the intent? Were they, during the course of the marriage, if some assets were created, were they willing to split it? If the woman had a whole listing of personal properties, or whether her salary or income which she was bringing into the marriage, that would also be split, etc. The case which Alka gave, that there was a big corpus that was created during the marriage. So all these points can be taken and the courts look into it, but not as a matter of right, that it creates a right that this is what was listed, because then they go into what was were the assets properly listed, were they given proper counsel, as I said earlier. So and whether these assets are within the jurisdiction of the court that is looking into this, is dealing with the matter. If, for example, in Celina's case, if those assets were in Austria, so far as the husband is concerned, how would she get it? So far as her own assets were concerned, I don't know how it came about that she transferred, were they transferred without her knowledge? So there are several permutations, combinations that happen in each matter. So it all amounts to according to what the matter is all about. But per se, there is no such thing as there's a prenup agreement, so the court are going to rely on it completely. It is only a backup.
Okay, it's like a roadmap.
Yes.
To show.
Also,
Yes.
just to add, in India, no one can force someone to live with someone or to get a divorce. So, if any spouse...
Have you met some of the mothers?
if any spouse decides to get a divorce and the other one contests it, or even if you do a mutual consent, which happens in two motions. The first motion you do, the first motion, and then the other party, one party refuses to come forward for the second motion. No court can compel them, even under contempt of court.
True.
So therefore, because marriage again is sacrosanct, you can't force them. So even if you have a prenup which says we'll split, something as simple as the first decision, are we getting divorced? That under law, here you can't enforce. Forget the rest of it, forget the financial terms, because there's no concept of matrimonial assets in India. There's no concept of, under the Dowry Protection Act, you are supposed to, at the time of marriage, make a list of what the gifts that have been received by the parties, everyone countersigns it. That's how you protect against dowry. That is never done. The only prenuptial agreement you have, or concept of financial security you have, is in a nikah-nama of meher, which is what, 500 rupees? 1000 rupees? How is that protecting a wife?
Correct.
How does that protect the spouse who is not doing or putting in, say she sells her own property to fund the business of the husband, or initially the husband's office is in her property. Where does her contribution lie? As a wife, during the course of the marriage, the wife is privy to a lot more than the husband's balance sheet. She's privy to conversations, she's privy to credit cards, she's privy to the kind of lifestyle they are enjoying. Those are the factors the court will look at if the parties are not able to settle themselves. And you are constrained to go to court.
So then can a prenup also work against you? Because at the time of a prenup, you've signed at a certain status. Maybe the husband has done well, the business has done well, but the prenup says कि इतना ही देना है. But actually he is improved in life.
you would be entitled to that same lifestyle. The yardstick for maintenance is the same lifestyle the parties enjoyed while they were together. Lifestyle, not assets.
Okay.
Lifestyle is so much more. No businessman will have a fair disclosure of their assets on their income tax returns. Everything will be expensed to the company as an expense or a benefit or a perk. Your driver, your rent, your staff at home, your, all of that. You're traveling for work, you've got a meeting, you're taking a holiday, that entire holiday gets expensed because of that 1 or 2 meetings you have on that same trip.
But going further on that, like Shreya mentioned, that recently this judgment came, I think it was an MACT case in which the homemaker's income was at 30,000. Now that's an extension. Now going by the same logic, why can't and why shouldn't it apply to a couple where the wife sits at home, looks after the house, looks after the children, while the man, totally independent, builds up this huge corpus of wealth? Why should not she also be entitled to, if not completely half, some amount of that money? Because without her support and her...
he couldn't have.
He couldn't have done it. So going forward on that, I think it's a very logical way to go about it. But that invariably never ever happens in India. But it does in foreign countries, but it doesn't happen. And I think that is so predominantly so unfair. Because with her support, he will not be in the position that he is now.
So I just want to supplement that. So Alka, while you're saying that it would be wrong if the income during the marriage is not split into two, but a prenup is really where the parties are financially at the start of their journey. If you keep that in mind, then it really protects both their assets and how they're going to deal with it during that. Of course, they can also supplement. A woman can put in clauses saying that during the course of this marriage, if the husband, and likewise for the husband, if the woman is doing better, that whatever earnings are made are going to be split half, 25%, 40%, either ways. So whatever is there during the course of the marriage would be a post-nup or a settlement which they do at the time of separation.
Exactly.
Similarly, the prenup is something that we are using when they are parting ways and not during the marriage. So the list of the assets is really right in the beginning and not applicable during. Of course, she can always sell something, like I said, or contribute to, and at the end of separation, she can say that, well, I contributed even monetarily, financially during this to the business, and it has earned manifold, so I'm entitled not just for the 5 crores, but several more.
Exactly.
But what happens to, you talking about the assets earned during marriage? What about a lot of these families, especially the hereditary assets? What happens to that?
They also need to...
But because the family will say, you are getting married, why should, all our assets be put at risk?
So the law will only look at the assets of the husband and the wife. There are judgments of the Supreme Court which say for the wife's parents' assets are meaningless and cannot be dragged into the fray of a litigation between husband-wife. In respect of the husband's assets or family assets or company assets, whatever you want to call them, they all end up getting embroiled. It's seen in the following manner. If there is any share in the HUF or in, say, a trust structure, right? Now it's from partnership or company assets, everything is moving to trusts a lot more as estate planning and vehicles in perpetuity to retain that control within the family, and you have beneficiaries. If you have these structures, then you also, the husband or the spouse, has an entitlement from there. They're either getting some X amount of money as a monthly share of profits or share of income from there. All of that will then be looked at over here if they are getting it or it's remaining on the books over there. Because that becomes part of the entitlement and the lifestyle you lived in and what funded that lifestyle.
So I just want to add here that the husband is not entitled to the wife's assets anyways.
That doesn't work the other way around.
Yes, he's not.
But if the economic imbalance?
Yeah, but she is.
She is, but
she
he is
is.
not.
Like she said, if there's an HUF or
Yeah, exactly.
she comes into the family, you see, but what she has inherited is not going to go into the marriage assets.
Okay, so that is.
So either ways, like it should cut both ways, just not in favor of the man or the woman. It should cut both ways, and that's why I again reiterate that prenup would make a difference if because and not only the assets at the prenup, but even during the marriage, they can have a clause in the prenup saying that at the end of the marriage, if something does happen, that we're going to split the assets in such a way. And like I said, the adults can manage on their own, but the main repercussions come on the children. And that is why I think, in my opinion, it's imperative that a prenup is something that two consenting adults should look at least.
But also to support that, sorry Priya, also to support that at the end, the court is looking into the prenup. So the maintenance and the custody of the kids, and like Shreya said, at which age they are at, what is the circumstance,
will all be taken into consideration.
That will be taken into account, and so will a prenup, which is like treated as a support evidence.
And also, when you get into a prenup, there are a whole lot of safeguards that get into it. As per the UK, that was Granantino, the UK case, in which, I mean, you can't make a woman or a man sign at the last moment, a day before, like she said, the wedding cards are out, and then you get a prenup out and you say you have to sign it. Like in England, I think it's 28 days, you can't, there has to be a gap. You can make it 1 month, 2 months, full disclosure, like she said. So there are a lot of safeguards on it, proper legal advice. So people are getting into it, I mean, knowing exactly what they are getting into. And that is not a bad thing.
I agree. I think there is a case for it, in terms of not just a legal surety, but I think as an emotional surety also. So you know where you stand and the attitudes of both the parties at the time of, discussing assets. Because when you're going there, go in with your eyes wide open, I think, and prenup really helps you to do that. So let's see what the Indian courts decide. But I think this conversation has really been very interesting. For a lot of people, there's been a lot of information that one can use. So thank you for all of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.